Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of EHeroes. Today I have Tami-Girl, aka Tamara Linnan, and there's a story behind that. But today we're going to learn about hashtags and profitable shenanigans. So welcome, Tami-Girl, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, the story of Tami-Girl. You want to reveal that?
Sure. First of all, my name is Tamara Linnan. Nobody ever says it correctly. I was, and I'll go on podcasts and things like that, and people they always say Tamara and they say it wrong. Steve Sims is my mentor and business coach. I know him for a while.
Known Steve for a long time.
Life of me, he could not say Tamara, and so I told him, people aren't going to believe I'm your really good friend when you say my really good friend Tamara when they know how to pronounce that. And so I had just sent Steve an ad. I was helping him do some things, and I spelled his last name wrong, Sims, and he called to give me crap. And so I said, listen, you can't say Tamara, so I can spell your name wrong. And he said, well, I'm just going to call you Tami-Girl. And he started doing that. I said, I don't like the name Tammy. And so that night we had one of our happy hours, the Steve Sims happy hour. This man proceeds to talk to some folks and say, Tami-Girl, I can call her that. You cannot. She will, kick your butt. But our group, the second he said, don't call her that, Tami-Girl was born. And, I just kind of had to go with it at this point. So.
Yeah. And the thing is that, you've overcome a lot. But you are the master of taking action. I've watched some of the things that you've done, and you don't say no. You just charge right ahead and just do it. And you prove people wrong all the time.
Wow, I appreciate that. That's not my view at all. But I just try. So where my motto, put action where your hashtag is, really came about was my frustration over people complaining. Like, for example, a celebrity takes their own life, right? Everybody's hashtag mental awareness, but that's it, right? The next day they're not doing anything. And, I started telling people, right, put action where that hashtag is. If you are hashtag me too, are you working with rape victims? If you're hashtag mental health, as I am, are you working suicide hotlines, or what are you doing saying this needs to change, right? That's kind of where that came from. And so I'm a very big proponent of just at least getting going and adjusting while you're in movement.
Now, we talked about hashtags off camera, but now that we're on camera, let's kind of dive into that, because a lot of people, and as I shared with you, a lot of people were big into hashtags years ago. And then it kind of died down, and now it's kind of making a resurgence. And LinkedIn is carrying hashtags now. You can put hashtags on Instagram. Twitter still is using hashtags. Facebook not so much, but a lot of the other networks, even minor social networks, are still using hashtags. Mm-hmm. So I mean, one, why is there a resurgence, and two, what can people do to protect their hashtags?
Absolutely. So you are correct. Hashtags were really big, like on Instagram a few years ago, on Twitter, and people were, spouting about these algorithms. By the way, there's no such thing. Okay. Social media is user end, right? It's based upon what the audience is doing, right? There's no genius math equation that you can figure out. And so people waste a lot of time trying to figure out how many hashtags to use on Instagram. Well, it doesn't work on Facebook, so don't do it. I'm a big proponent of consistency. Mm-hmm. It didn't help you on Facebook, but it certainly didn't harm you. And Google loves to read hashtags. And so I have been following hashtags for several years. I actually registered my hashtags in 2017. Didn't know if it would work. It was free. Let's see what happens, right? Sort of thing. And so what happened is the industry that still uses hashtags the most is the event industry. Mm-hmm. And music in concerts and things like that. And because I was the director of operations for several tours, I got to see exactly how hashtags affected event advertising, how fans would find out about these. So there's a site called Twubs, TWUBS.com. Twitter owns it, but that's where you can go and register your hashtags. It's an event advertising platform. And so hashtags have always kind of been huge in this, the event industry, and people didn't pay attention to that because they spent too much time trying to figure out, where it works and where it doesn't. And so the bottom line is be consistent, right? And so I use the same hashtags on Facebook as I did everywhere else.
Right.
Why it's resurging now again is because of we're in a digital age now. Events had to go online. Well, how do fans now, reach folks and everything? And if people notice, Facebook and LinkedIn have been doing updates. Facebook has those rooms now. Now on Facebook, you can actually earn the right to do a Facebook Live and charge audience members to watch it. So now they're an event platform. And so now Facebook and those social media sites are reading the hashtag registration sites like Twubs when they weren't before.
Right.
And so what it is, and it's not anything that they kind of did on purpose, was they realized that we're going to almost exclusive digital age. All right, so now how do you protect your digital goods, right? And so the answer to that was hashtag registration. Now, patents and hashtags very different. If you patent somebody, it's because you don't want somebody using your stuff. You want people using your hashtags because they lead back to you. They click your hashtag, they're going to wherever it is you are, right? So it's not to stop people from using it. It's an attempt to figure out a digital patent and stop people from monetizing off your brand if it becomes popular.
Right.
Coca-Cola in 2017 was the first hashtag lawsuit, and they sued for the right to own the hashtag for the Smile Coca-Cola campaign. They won that. And so it is the wild, wild west concerning hashtags. But in the event world, they've always been really, really important. And the bottom line really is use them everywhere. People just be consistent with it. And if you Google Tamara Linnan, my presence on there is 100% because I worked in the event industry and speakers are sharing an event. And I am everywhere, gangbusters on Google, and I paid for none of it. And it's because events, hashtags have always been really, really important to that particular industry.
Yeah. And, you know, it's no secret, I've explained this to many of my listeners, is that I'm not a fan of Twitter. But with hashtags, you don't have to use them on Twitter. You can use them on YouTube. You can use them, you can use them on Instagram. But what I've been seeing is that people overuse them. They'll have 30 hashtags in one post, and it was like, spam much? I keep it light.
Problem is they're being taught to do that, right? You had these big name instant business gurus out there telling people you got to use at least 60 hashtags or whatever that is. And so I see both sides, right? It looks spammy, but at the same time, that's how you reach that particular audience, right? So, for example, if you're a business coach and you work with authors and speakers and let's say plumbers, you're going to have to use hashtags on your post to reach those people. So it's really not spam per se. It is. There's no way to reach a wider audience without using more hashtags.
Yeah. It just looks a little messy, I think, sometimes.
It can.
And I think that's the ideological things that gurus will tell people, and people will listen. They'll say, "Oh, I have to put 30 hashtags, or I can only put 6, or they, people only listen to one person, but they should really be testing what works for them."
They should, and it works differently on every platform. as well. And so again, it comes down to consistency. I'm not a fan of Twitter, but my hashtag goes out on there. And here's the thing too: social media only allows you so many characters.
Yeah.
So there's going to be times where there's just no way in hell you can use 30 hashtags. So at that point, then comes the research of which ones are most important. So
Yeah.
I have a set of 3 consistency hashtags. So every post has my brand's hashtags regardless 100% of the time on every single platform.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Tumblr, I'm on TikTok, Triller. I never actually go on there and post, but my auto hashtags get sent there. And again, it's that consistency. If you're not using hashtags across every social media platform, you don't. It's just like market research. You don't know where you should put advertising dollars at, right? And people do need to be doing that consistency. But everybody's looking for the blue pill of I'll use 40 hashtags on Instagram and be a zillionaire, and that's just not how it works in the real business world.
Well, you mentioned 3 hashtags that you use consistently, and if you switch over to LinkedIn, LinkedIn started, allowing people to post more of their hashtags, and they even encourage on your business page, if you have one, to pick three hashtags that you use consistently as well, and they'll track those for you. But most people don't use that consistency behind their brand or their plan, and so it just seems like they have no rhyme or reason when they post stuff.
That's true. People are impatient, right? And so if they create, I recently wrote an article called "It's not the what, it's the who," and the who is usually you screwing up stuff, right? Um, this product hasn't sold anything in 3 weeks, so I'm going to stop doing it. Well, I'm not a quadrillionaire, and I've been using hashtags, so screw it, right? And people don't stick with anything long enough to find out what works, which is just bad business, right? Um, Unfortunately, being an entrepreneur now is kind of like being a rock star. But those of us who've been entrepreneurs well before it was cool, right? That old country western song, "I was country before country was cool," right? What? Entrepreneurship is like that right now. And so people jump ship and they don't figure out what works, and then they're running circles. They're broke, and because they're not treating their business like an actual business, and like you said, doing that research as well.
And I'm staring right at your picture on your Facebook page, and it's the cartoony face with the blue hair, and it says growth zone with profitable shenanigans. And I remember a few months ago when you were planning out that kind of that look. uh,
Mhm.
You know what? How did you come up with that brand?
Okay, so the name "Profitable Shenanigans" became a joke. And again, so if you don't know me, I like to have a good time. I can take $10 into the Dollar Tree and come out with the best week ever, right? And when you're on the road, as much as I was with celebrities, like so, I was a director of operations for Les Brown Jr. for quite a while. Chris Noggle, who was with HGTV's Risky Builders. I've worked with Grant and Milet, all those sorts of things in the event realm. And so I like to have fun. Tours can be very stressful. There's always some moron trying to burn the event to the ground, right? And we're running around. And so I don't need my second heart attack in life. So I dress up and I'm silly. And Jess Steinberg, who is now a dear friend of mine, was speaking at an event. And he called me, and I was at the event, and I answered the phone. And he's like, "I need to know what your title is so I can write up something for you," right? And I was joking. I'm like, "I'm the CEO of Profitable Shenanigans," because in the event world, everybody's like, "Oh, Tamara's up to shenanigans," right? Because I got fake mustaches on. I'm dressed as Darth Vader. I got drones. I'm a good time. My CPA does not like me when he's like, "You can't write off a T-shirt launcher." Yes, I can. And so I like to have a good time. And so I made that joke, and that's what Jeff Steinberg printed. And his story went pretty viral. And then all of a sudden, I would get asked on a podcast, and they would introduce me as the CEO of Profitable Shenanigans, also known as the Starving Dog. And I'm like, what is going on? That's not the name of my business. So it just kept happening and kept happening. And then, and it actually wasn't me that came up with that brand, as far as what, to call it. It was Steve Sims, quite frankly. Right. And Steve Sims tells a story about how his business became blue fishing, and it certainly wasn't named that. It was because your audience kind of did that. And I called Steve one day. I'm like, these people, do I correct them on air? They're not giving the right business name. Like, I don't know why this is happening. Right. He goes, who cares what they call you as long as they're calling you? Roll, just go with it. And but the cartoon character came about because I don't know if this is video or not, but if you notice, I'm missing all my teeth and stuff right now. I'm chronically ill, and when I started working with Steve, I had no website, I had nothing. I'm old school. I met all my clients at events, right? I didn't need a website, and so I worked behind the scenes, not a lot of photos of me doing what I do, right? Because I'm working and with celebrities and stuff, and so because I had just had jaw surgery, I got 2 more to go. Actually, had to have my jawbones replaced. Um, Steve came up with the idea of creating a cartoon character, um, who we now is Tami-Girl, right? To for advertising, because we didn't want people feeling sorry for me, or that sort of thing, before they knew who I was, because a lot of people would judge that, not understanding that I'm very good at what I do, right? And then make the mistake of not reaching out, or possibly working with us. And so Steve Sims, everything right now, that route is 100% Steve Sims's fault. And it actually worked out very, very well. And again, in our favor, hashtags aside, Gary Vaynerchuk about a year ago started going the cartoon realm. And now Oprah, Steve Harvey, if you go with Kevin Hart, all the big ones are now using characters and cartoon ads, and so that is going to be the next thing, and it's getting pretty popular. So again, yeah, Proper Shenanigans was just a smart out comment I made, and then it caught on fire, and we couldn't put the fire out. So
And starving dog, where'd that come from?
that's actually a story. So those people who follow me know that I'm very passionate about suicide prevention. My mother took her life when I was 8 years old, and I was a teen Carter, and I've lost a lot of people to suicide, and I darn near did it myself. And so I've worked suicide hotlines since I was 13 years old. All my degrees are in psychology, because I spent my entire life trying to figure out why my mother took her own life. Because we're talking the 1980s, 1987, and I was Catholic. So I was told my mother was in hell. Mental health wasn't looked upon very well. And so my mother was a selfish person who was burning in hell. And that was the legacy that I had. And after my mother passed away, I never saw a photo of her. And you could not say her name in my household. It was like Voldemort. And I was her only daughter. So I had a really, really hard time. Especially because people would say, "Oh, you're just like your mother." I thought I had to kill myself. I thought I was destined for that, and that negative concept. Because where I come from, to this day, they consider psychology a pseudoscience, and we know better. So anyway, I was working for the YWCA, Women's Abuse Shelter, years and years ago. And what I discovered, and what people will, is if you confront somebody in a toxic situation and say that person's toxic, or why are you doing that, and they shut down because they're embarrassed, and now they will stay with the abuser longer, or they will withdraw, and they won't fix the situation they're in because they feel judged. Because when you are in that situation, you can't think straight. So when you're a person who goes, well, I don't understand why you just don't leave, you can't understand because you're not in the middle of how this works. So I started telling a story about starving dog, because I grew up on a farm, and it's a real quick story where there was a dog that lived next door, no fences, nothing. But the farmer kicked the dog every day, was really abusive, and I could never understand why the dog didn't run away. And so I watched this, perpetually go on. And then one day the dog's had enough, right? And the dog starts growling at the farmer, right? And I'm watching, and I go, this will be the day that dog bites that farmer and gets out of Dodge, right? Like this is it. But just as the dog is going to attack, the farmer throws the dog a big, juicy steak. And that dog is so hungry, it gobbles it up as fast as it can. And, and while it's getting something that it's starving for, the dog is thinking, oh my God, he's going to take care of me now. He gets it. I'm so grateful for this. Things will get better now. And then the cycle starts all over again. When I tell that story, working with individuals like that, they for me go, that's my job, that's my marriage. Like they automatically figure out where they are the starving dog, right? Where what's going on that they should fix in their life. And those are very toxic situations because it's not bad enough for them to leave. It's not good enough for them to be happy. It's in that weird middle gray area that you stay in forever. And it's not a good way to go. And so the starving dog is because of that story. And I've been speaking on suicide forever, before speaking was popular. And so I have several stories. The starving dog, I hate orange juice, the hurdle jumper, things like that, to get across to people how, how to get them in the mindset to acknowledge they're in a bad situation so that they'll be open-minded enough to then get the information to fix it.
But it's that background that you have, it's those experiences that you have that actually bring to the table how you can help businesses, to that next level.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm kind of OCD. So when I was in the military, and I was a surgical tech, right? And the surgical tech realm, you got to do things the right way or people could die, right? So, it comes down to, you need to put out 12 anesthesia every time. You need to do things the right way every time. I did not recognize this in myself when I started my business. So I started my first business in 2008. And I was working in the surgery realm. So what had happened was my husband was overseas. He was deployed for like almost 4 years straight, and I was gone 14 hours a day as a surgical tech. And so I took this job as a garage door dispatcher for like $10 an hour because they told me I could work from home. I wanted to be home because my girls were younger and it was going to be summertime, and I didn't want them running around like, don't leave 13-year-old girls unattended for 14 hours. Not a good plan in life, right? And so I wanted to be home more. And so I did. I took that huge pay cut of 25 an hour down to 10. And in that time, they ran very inefficiently. It drove me crazy, right? So I built their website. I got them off of Excel. I found dispatching software for this garage door company. And within about 6 months, they had given me a raise. Everything was great. And I said, okay, great. Time for me to work from home. And they said, no, your children will probably distract you. You're doing a great job, but that offer's off the table. So I cannot tell you how pissed off I was. And never in my entire life I considered being a business owner, nothing. So while I was sitting there thoroughly annoyed with life, in Arizona, they have a lot of HOAs. If you put in a garage door, the homeowner has 24 hours to paint it properly or they could get fined. And the garage door company, our painter never answered his phone, never. It was really hard to get on his schedule. And that same day, my boss said, you know what? We're here 24 hours a day. We should charge the painter just a little bit of money, answer his calls and do his schedule so we can put ourselves on his schedule. We're here anyway. And I tell people, by the way, this is not good advice, but what I did was I snapped and I went, if that small business owner needs answering service or that service, other people need that service, and I can do that from home. And I quit my job that day. I formed an LLC, got one phone line, and ran a Craigslist ad and started running an answering service.
Wow.
Now I had every intention on being a shitty answering service. Take a message. Did not know I could not physically do that. And so these small businesses were hiring our answering service, but they ran so horribly that answering the phones for them was a nightmare. it was me or my staff getting screamed at, right? Because they didn't know how to set up their routes sufficiently. It was just a mess. And so I started creating the standard operating procedures for small businesses, not to help them, but to make our lives easier on our end. Had no clue that was something people paid good money for, right? I was just an answering service trying not to have a headache. Like, I'm a huge proponent of, I don't want to make, $10,000 a month for a $50,000 headache, right? I had clients. And so it kind of just went from there. And I'm a control freak, didn't know it. And then, was able to, to do that. And how I ended up knowing people like Steve Sims in the industry I'm in now was I was in San Diego speaking on suicide prevention. I happened to be speaking at two events in one day, as was Les Brown and Les Brown Jr. They saw me speak twice. I don't know what they still to this day can't tell you why they called me. But a month later, I get a phone call and it's Les Brown Jr. saying, "We saw you speak. I want to know what you do besides speak. I just want to know more what you kind of do for business, right?" So I explained that I get hired to do standard operating procedures. I teach active listening to call centers. I make things run efficiently. Inefficiency drives me insane. And he's like, "Well, we're launching a new program. We need somebody like you. Why don't you come see if you're a good fit?" And then next thing I know, I'm on the road with Les Brown Jr. Making things run smoothly, right? Making sure the VIPs were getting there. That if the venue space fell through, fixing that kind of stuff. I do really well in chaos as far as thinking on my feet and fixing things that folks can't. And I was really surprised because I was a surgical tech. I'm used to, if you panic, people die, right? And I was at an event and a grown person walked up to me and said the words, "We have a PowerPoint emergency." And I just stood there like, did I, what emergency? Right? And then to watch an entire event almost get crippled because the PowerPoint didn't work I was like, oh. So it's really easy, obviously, to impress these folks if you don't panic. Plug in the computer, and now people think I'm a genius. But that's kind of how I ended up doing what I do, and I love being in situations where I can solve people's problems. I like to leverage resources at the level people are at. Whether you got negative 50 cents or $8 million, what can we do to leverage that and get you to where your next step is kind of where I come from.
That's that's just awesome. I mean, I enjoy listening to those types of stories because, you know, you've taken adversity, turned it into opportunity, and to take a service that you knew maybe wasn't going to be the greatest, just answering phones all day long.
Yep.
But you turned it into something even greater, and now you're able to go in and create these standard operating procedures that most businesses operate by the seat of their pants anyway. They have no plan B. They have no books that tell you this employee does this employee does that. If I would get hurt and I would break my legs, I can't come to work. There needs to be manuals that show the next person how to do my job. Nobody
Absolutely.
has those types of things.
Well, sadly, because of corporation mentality, the real work world, the 8 to 5 work world is, if I tell other people how to do my job, I might lose my job. And so they want to be the only person that can do that, right? And they don't communicate well. And most entrepreneurs, the problem is also they don't get out of their own way, right? They tell me, well, we got to figure out how things work before we bring your team in. No. You don't know how to work. We'll tell you how it should run. You know what I mean? And even getting some of these entrepreneurs to acknowledge they don't know what the hell they're doing,
Right.
that they should not be making the decisions they're making for themselves, and actually getting them to do it is a whole other.
Yeah, if they knew how it worked, then they would already have this standard operating procedure, but they don't know
Exactly.
how it works.
Right? Like, yeah, we would not be having this conversation if you knew what you were doing, right?
So how do people get a hold of you? Where do they go?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Just type in Tami-Girl, huh?
Yeah, I was a little upset when you Googled me. I'm like, oh crap, I'll show up in a lineup now. But so Tamara Linnan, Tamara Linnan, Linnan on Facebook, tamaralinnan.com. Um, yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. Pretty easy to track down. Can't hide. We have the if you do at Real Starving Dog on Facebook, you'll get to our Starving Dog Action Pack page, where you'll be able to see stuff. Steve is a member of our Starving Dog Action Pack, and it's quite simply, we're a group of entrepreneurs that take action, and everybody within the Action Pack has their own businesses, but they are out in the community supporting some sort of cause year round. Steve Sims raises money for prisons, right? I do for mental health. We have people who work with like sex trafficking. And so we're just a army of action. And we get out there and we help spread one another's messages and tell people that it takes a village, and you all need to be out here actually, doing something other than once a year taking a selfie at the homeless shelter on Thanksgiving Day, and making your community a better place to be.
That's awesome. And this is what makes you an e-hero, because not only do you provide people with necessary service, but you go above and beyond, and now you're helping the community with that same level of commitment. And I just think that's phenomenal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's not. I don't do things I do. I tell folks try to be noble or anything. I always tell people I help. I try to help other people because I don't know how to help myself, and I don't want people as broken as I am or have been. Right. I was a teen cutter. At one point in my life, I was, drinking nonstop. I weighed over 400 pounds. I hated my life. I hated it. I hated it. And so I figured, I couldn't figure out how to be happy and all that. And so, you know, I started getting out and helping people so that I, wasn't just sitting around feeling sorry for myself, because at one point I was a very negative, toxic, angry, bitter with the world individual. I really was. And I just didn't want to be that way anymore.
And I don't think you are. I think that, and a lot of people that see you, I think that if they really knew who you were and knew what you did, they wouldn't feel sorry for you. They'd honor that commitment that you have to them to help them. And you know, to me, I look at you and I think, you're that perfect entrepreneur that's out there helping people. And it just, other people might say, "Wow, I feel sorry." That, to me, I can't feel sorry for people that actually do something, and you are out there putting action into motion every single day.
I appreciate that. One of my biggest pet peeves are nonprofits that feel like they need money to help the community, and they do to a point. And because we're coming up on the Giving Tuesday season, and so all the nonprofits that don't do anything all year round are now asking for funds. And again, I tell people you can help people with $0, right? You can go down and find a place to volunteer, and there's a money isn't the only answer to helping other people.
Right.
So
And
I
and
really
some and sometimes, if you don't like where you're helping, start your own place, and start your own thing. And you got to start somewhere. But sometimes the politics involved in some of these bigger organizations get too much for people. Start your own thing.
absolutely, and you don't need a nonprofit to start your own thing and help people. The reality is nonprofits are a giant pain in the backside to run. Um, the government can tell you what you can and can't do. You have to have quarterly meetings, and there's a really constraint to the types of help you're allowed to give people, and all that. And so, I tell folks, start working with a nonprofit that has the same cause that you have.
Hmm.
right? And then work your way up and figure out how to help before you ever consider starting your own 501(c). I do have a 501(c). So my answering service has been running since 2008 as a full scale dispatching service now. 2 years ago, 2017, I was in the hospital for 11 months straight.
Wow.
And so that was kind of when I did my jump into entrepreneurship and said, I need to get my book published. I need to, do these different things. Because I've been writing since I was a kid. I've written 30 books in my life. And so my answering service, Front Office Solutions, as actually a legal 501(c), and we only hire chronically ill veterans or their family members so that people will not lose their jobs if they are sick. Because I watched a lot of people check out against medical advice as my roommates when I was in the hospital for 11 months straight, that were afraid of losing their job. So they left the hospital and they didn't take the time to get better.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a part of the no longer being a bitter person. And because I was sitting there from a hospital bed running my business, and wasn't getting homeless and things like that. And really just opened my eyes to being really, really grateful for the opportunities that I have. And that, to try to give those same opportunities to other people so that they can take the time they need to heal.
Now, your latest book, is that the laws of attracting greatness?
That book's actually 2 years old.
Wow.
So here's the deal, Steve Sims. Me as the best author nobody's ever heard of. So I'm not the brightest. I can take the brand of any influencer, do great things with it. I love to do that. Did none of that for myself. And so none of my books were published at all. And one day I wasn't thinking about it. Steve Sims is my business coach. And one day he sends me an email. Have you ever thought about writing a book? Right. And so I called him. I'm like, I got like 30 of them. What do you want? I've been writing forever. And he's like, what? And so that's a source of contention when you have 30 books and none of them are on Amazon. So
I I have 28 of them, and
and so yeah, again in that happy hour, Steve started just introducing me as the best author nobody's ever heard of, and so that's been published now for 2 years. It's Winner's Mindset, the Law of Attraction, basically. Now, people, the Law of Attraction is not think happy thoughts and checks fly in your window. You got to go out and do things, but it really is. Because I'm chronically ill, I've had to learn that um, there's a difference between being miserable and being in misery. What I mean is you can not feel well, you can do these things, but your mindset doesn't have to suffer with it.
yeah,
And so that's a little bit where I come from. That on the days that I feel the worst or I got the 104 fever are the days that I go out of my way to have a good time or make other people laugh, which is why my closet looks like a freaking carnival, and I got smoke machines, I got all kinds of fun stuff. And so really, the winner's mindset is 90% of what we do is what up here, right?
mhm.
Through any day. So that's what it's a lesson I had to learn myself about. Didn't matter how sick I was or how hard my life was. I didn't have to be a jackass all the time.
This is great, and we could make this interview go longer and longer, but for the it's already at the 45-minute mark, and I just want to thank the listeners because uh, uh, Tami-Girl, and I know she doesn't like being called that,
Oh
but
no, now.
I just think that she's got a fabulous story, and I think that everybody needs to have standing operating procedures, and I think that you need to go to Amazon and get her book, The Laws of Attracting Greatness, Winner's Mindset, because I think that using Tamara as an example, you're going to help make your business better. So I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. See ya.